Amanda, Rand, thank you so much for joining me here on the Social Entrepreneurship and Innovation podcast. For folks who are unfamiliar with y'all, I'd love if we could get some brief introductions. Just because we have two guests here, I'll keep it simple and turn it over to Amanda first to kick us off.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Let's see. I am a journalist turned chef turned marketer. So this is sort of a third career for me. I started out in tech news, working for some of the original tech news sites, paidcontent.org and gigaom.com. And then along the way, discovered a passion for food, decided to go to culinary school, and decided to become a food writer. Didn't do any research on the food writing industry and realized, oh, there are like 8 jobs and they're all taken. And that's that. So I'm going to do something else. And then, I kind of parlayed that into a food media career, got into content marketing at a direct-to-consumer snack company called NatureBox. And then just kind of, grew my marketing experience there. Have worked at, worked in D2C, B2B, B2C, worked on the agency side for a bit. And now I'm here at SparkToro, working with Rand Fishkin and Casey Henry, and having so much fun all the time. Like truly, it's been an amazing past couple of months here, and we're having fun on this podcast too. But yeah,
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for being here. And before I turn it over to you, Rand, Amanda, I saw a bit about one of the benefits of signing up for your newsletter were I think recipe tips or food tips with no fluff.
yes.
Can you tell me, can you define that a little bit more clearly for me? What's the fluff that we're trying to avoid in the cooking tip space?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really just the recipe, right? Like, I think, I do think that there are times when the very long backstory, the very long context behind a recipe on a food blog can be really helpful. Like maybe when you are new to a certain kind of cuisine, it might help to know more about the ingredients, but sometimes people are just looking for a recipe. They just want to make the thing and have it be done with. So in my newsletter, I do just that. It's, I try to make it, usually it's a recipe. Every once in a while, it's a cooking tip, but it's always original some way. It might be derived from a couple of different recipes that I've turned to as original sources, but have reiterated on. And I just try to make it accessible by not giving the backstory.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and I mean that's a nightmare we can all resonate with, that experience of Googling for particular recipes and getting the ad blockers and this 1,500 words of the origin story of how this recipe came to be. But with all that, Rand, thank you so much for your patience. Would love to hear a little bit more about you and the work that you do.
Man, I'm so boring. So I dropped out of college and started a company called Moz, which was in the SEO software space, and ran that company for many years. Stepped down as CEO in 2014 and was there a few more years left in 2018 and started SparkToro the next day. I published a book about, well, I didn't publish it, but, Penguin Random House published a book about that experience called Lost and Founder that I wrote, which a lot of folks in the entrepreneurial and tech space have read. And yeah, that's been exciting and fun to hopefully convert a few more people away from, I need to grow at all costs and do the venture capital thing. And yeah, maybe there's another way. And that's what we're trying to do with SparkToro, which is change the game, right? Change the game in a bunch of ways, including, this concept of chill work, which Corey, I know you saw and we'll probably chat about today. We're trying to change the game in terms of funding structure, change the game in terms of how we're building a product, especially in software as a service with a subscription business where we're much less single term subscription, churn rate focused and much more how much value can we provide to people that will hopefully make them want to come back whenever they have this problem, or never again if they never have this problem that they need to solve again. And yeah, SparkToro has been just the two of us, myself and my co-founder Casey, until July when Amanda joined us. And now we cannot live without her. And so Yeah. So Casey and I are like, oh man, all right, how do we make sure that she stays? Okay, we got to just like build the best company in the world. And um, yeah, so that's been our journey. SparkToro is, for folks who might not be familiar, it's like an audience research tool. So helps you figure out what your audience is listening to, watching, reading, paying attention to. And when I say your audience, could be any audience, any online audience that you can describe. And we have about 1,000 customers right now. So it's grown nicely. The product's only been live 17 months.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll say Grow Ensemble is one of those 1,000 customers. So we use the tool in our content campaigns with our partners here, and we'll definitely get more into some of the details of that later on. But
no one can see you this $20
I'd
bill
love to
across the visible table.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I'd love to start, Rand, with it seems like the journey of SparkToro is now nearing maybe 4-ish years ish. I'd love to know, first off, just how does it feel different than generally right now, your experience at this point in time? How is it feeling different in contrast to your work with Moz?
Yeah, it is. What's weird, Corey, is there's this great deal more happiness and sort of underlying satisfaction with building a company in this unique way, and building a company sort of the way we want, rather than the way that tech world kind of dictates through its asset class structures and capital structures and those kinds of things. But Casey and I were talking about this. The highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low. So, gosh, you know what it's like? It's, I don't know if either or both of you, this is an odd time to bring it up, but like your romantic relationships in like high school and your early 20s had this very different feel, right? Somebody broke up with you, broke your heart. Someone turned you down for a date. Someone didn't turn out to be who you hoped they'd be. And it felt like the world was falling apart, right? The emotional core of yourself was just falling through your body, and, nothing would ever be good again, and the world was ending. And then, as you get older and more mature, right? And if you find a spouse or a partner for long term, right? Even if you have a bad fight or things are like not going great, or, the lows are not as low, right? Those bad feelings about what's going on in the relationship, you kind of know that it's going to be repaired and it's going to be fine. You'll talk it through. You figure it out tomorrow. Everything's going to be fine. And the same time, right? Those highs are not nearly, you don't get the adrenaline meets dopamine meets, in boys' cases, lots of testosterone meets, every other hormone that a late stage teenager has got going on, right? All of those things, that's not nearly as powerful, right? When you, walk down the pier holding hands after, on date number 1,000 versus date number 2. And that's fine, right? It's still a great feeling. It's a different kind of great feeling. That's how I describe SparkToro versus Moz. When we made $99 at Moz, it was like, oh my God, everything's amazing. We're the best. And then that customer canceled. It's never going to work. The world is ending. At SparkToro, it's kind of like, oh, we're having a bad few days. Hey, we're having a good few days. It's great. It's that.
Yeah. At some point, you got to get off the roller coaster, And Amanda, I'm curious to hear from your perspective. And I liked how this was documented on the SparkToro blog a bit. But Amanda, I'd love to hear what appealed to you about working with SparkToro, and you can be as honest as you want. What appealed?
Yeah, I'm not
to you
listening.
about working with Rands, maybe. But I'd love to hear what that process was like for you in coming across SparkToro and finding it to be a fit.
I mean, kind of similar to Rand. I had a lot of high highs and low lows throughout my career. But as an employee, not as a founder. I got to, well, first got to kind of be on the outside looking in as a tech journalist. So got to kind of learn about how companies got funded, what companies did with the funding, what it means to IPO, like that stuff that all just sounded really exciting. And I just never thought I would be part of that world. Um, Not through any sense of like wishing and hoping it would happen, but it didn't, but just more of that wasn't the path that I thought I would be on. And then when I kind of fell into marketing, because remember the food writing thing didn't work out because I didn't do any research there. um, I got to experience that sort of hyper growth startup kind of life, from different kinds of areas, right? So NatureBox was, I think it was series B when I joined. I was like employee number 17 or 18. And we were trying to grow really fast. We were all doing different kinds of marketing things, marketing spaghetti we were throwing at the wall. I was doing content marketing, PR, product marketing, copywriting, email marketing, a bunch of things that I was not good at, at least not yet. And just trying to make things work. Um, then from there, I got to work at Fitbit, which was pre-IPO when I joined. I was probably like, I think the year that I joined, I was like employee number like 300 or 400. But by the following year, we already had like 1,500 employees. So massive growth. And I was super lucky to join when I did. Got to be part of the team when we IPO'd, got to wake up early, go to work at 6 a.m. We all drank champagne together. It was truly so much fun. And like, that was definitely a high where I never thought I would get to experience that kind of moment, and was super grateful for it. I'm still super grateful for it. But I mean, was there for several years, ups and downs at Fitbit. If you were to Google Fitbit 2014, 2015, 2016, you'll probably see a lot of different kinds of news highlights. IPO was awesome. Things were going great. I got to lead the press release announcing HIPAA compliance. It was, I mean, awesome. But then a couple months later, the stock took a shit. I mean, stock price was tanking. I think at one point when I was there, it was like $50 per share. By the time I left, it was like $7 a share. It hurt, right? And that was as the mid-level employee who like just kind of had no idea what was happening and was just hoping things would turn up at some point. That was weird, right? But then also, not being a founder or executive, I wasn't really the one taking on the risk. It was just, oh, this is awkward and kind of crappy. This is hard. Anyway, like, so after that, got to get a sense of like consultant life, worked with a couple of early stage startups, and then got to experience agency life. And agency life coincided with the pandemic, with trying to figure out how to work full time while also taking care of my toddler. My husband is also working full time. So we were just kind of muddling through each day, doing like, with childcare included, it ended up being like 15, 16-hour days of just making it happen all the time. So that was a different kind of low, right?
Yeah.
Little bit of a meandering story here, but point is, by the time that Rand and I happened to meet, I was just at this point where I was like, I want to take better control of my career in a way that I hadn't been in charge of before. I didn't want to do the traditional job hunting. I also, didn't want to start my own company or do the consultant thing again. And so when we started, we grabbed lunch. It was me, Rand, and his wife, Geraldine. And it was awesome. It was kind of like meeting old friends for the first time, but we were technically strangers. But it was great. We got to just be very candid with each other. And I wasn't actively looking for a job. So I also wasn't like, oh, I hope he likes me and I hope he hires me. It was like, well, I hope we could work together at some point. Right. So I felt like I got to kind of come at it from a better position of power to be like, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Like, also, like, here are things that excite me. Here's what's really hard about working today. here's what I don't want to do. Also, I'm kind of old and I don't want to deal with, I can't do the 60-hour work thing. Like I'm not doing that ever again. And, and Rand was very much like, yeah, that sucks. I don't want to do that either. Like, yeah, you shouldn't work that hard. Nobody should. And so it became, all right, SparkToro is still early stage. It's just Rand and Casey. This is a fun opportunity to do something kind of different that kind of straddles the role of marketing and product, customer experience, and then just be able to support two founders who are making a really cool product. So, yeah, I mean, it sort of became a natural fit or a natural next step for what I was looking for professionally and from a mental health kind of standpoint.
There's so much in that I'm imagining it overlapped quite nicely to Rand's philosophy and where he was coming from with starting SparkToro. And I love exactly what you said there of wanting to take more control over your career and what kind of work experience you're going to have and how that would then balance into the life that you're living. And Rand, I like the public announcement on SparkToro, the blog post that you had for Amanda's joining forces with y'all. How much of that experience did you share in what Amanda is describing there from your perspective? How are you feeling in connecting with someone like Amanda?
Yeah, so I believe our first interactions were on Twitter, if I remember correctly. And then Amanda created a sarcastic website to make fun of a version of my name, which was amazing. And that website had a bunch of restaurant recommendations in Southern California. So, that's obviously the way to mine Geraldine's heart. And then, when I think when we met up, I had this hope, right? I told Geraldine in the car ride over, I was like, okay, I wonder if I really like Amanda. I wonder if there's a way for us to work together. Cause she's, I don't know, sort of gets marketing, gets a part of the marketing world that I don't get. How about that? Right. There's a marketing universe, especially I think one of the first ones that we found together was you've probably seen these, Corey, like the fortune cookie tweets. Right.
Yeah.
And then some of the TikTok videos and Instagram sort of meme stuff around marketing. And I kept having this, how does that help anyone do marketing any better? Why did they amplify that? Why is that getting any traction? And Amanda and I had a bunch of DMs about it. And she was like, okay, here's what I think's going on. And here's what explains it. And I was like, oh, okay. I think I see the incentives here and the structure, right? So when we got together, Amanda was like, yeah, well, I'm doing this thing, at the start of the meal. I played it cool. I didn't try and be visibly upset about it. But when she told me she was already, employed and doing something else, I was like, well, nuts. and then the end of the meal comes, right? The check comes and Amanda goes, okay, sit down. I have to talk to you about something. I don't remember exactly what her opening line was, but she was like, I want to pitch you on why I should be SparkToro's first employee. And she, you probably could have picked up my jaw off the floor. But it was an excellent experience. And then, then I went back.
Your jaw was in the bowl of the Galston. We were at a Mexican restaurant.
But it was very, very exciting. And I think, it is not the kind of thing where we had a job opening, right? Casey and I probably, if we hadn't found someone, right, who pitched to us, who was kind of as perfect a match as Amanda is, I doubt we would have even hired someone, by the end of this year. But sometimes magic happens. I think this is one of the things when people say, oh, social media doesn't build real relationships, or, hey, you can't use social to, move your business forward. Right. Boy, the number of counterexamples I have just keeps racking up. So.
Absolutely. And I just mean to kind of dissect this moment, just because I think that it is as well representative of much of the culture that y'all are constructing there, and perhaps as an antithesis to something else as well. It's nice to see what that process might look like of, one, hiring someone, joining the company, how that could look a little bit different than what we might think in the context of maybe a more traditional tech or startup or kind of hustly culture that we all know quite well. And just to kind of bridge to that now, much of the reason I felt inspired to send an email out to y'all was the post that y'all wrote, Rand, on hustle culture versus chill work. And I always get curious when someone writes something particularly like that, folks who publish a lot of content online, what inspired you to write that post at that moment? Like, why did you feel like it was time for you to put that down into the blog?
Yeah, so I actually wrote that post in a hotel room in Victoria, BC. First trip out of the country in like 18 months. Geraldine and I went up there to visit some friends. Canada just started letting in Americans like the week before. And we were going up there for our anniversary trip. So, long drive, long ferry ride out to Vancouver Island, but lovely. And we were, I think, just in this kind of beautiful state where, I was literally getting up and touring around Victoria with my wife and maybe doing like an hour or two of work a day, right? And this is, SparkToro is a 3-person company that's, doing north of $1 million in revenue and has 1,000 customers and is growing quickly. You would expect a founder would be like, I am burning the midnight candle and it's 50-hour work weeks. No, it is not. It is not. And it's not by design, right? Like, we engineered the business to be one that required very little human intensive capital time. And that, that I think is a really beautiful thing. And just realizing the freedom that we had to do that, and the sort of appreciation and gratitude for, I'm kind of on vacation and SparkToro is just doing great. And Amanda and Casey are rocking it. And neither of them are like burning their midnight oil like that. That's something I want to share.
Well, and especially in that, just setting the context of a 3-person company, with all that you imagine a company can do, there's always so much, in the context of growth, whatever it might be. There's obviously a pressure or an angst that you kind of have to battle against to be like, no, it's okay that we're not doing that right now. We're doing the appropriate amount that we should be doing. And that seems like such a difficult line.
So I think,
but I'm wondering how.
Yeah, I think the mental model. Sorry to jump in.
No, please.
I agree with you that many people, founders and employees and team members, feel that pressure. Like, hey, I should be doing more because there's all these more things to do. And my last few years has been about flipping the mental model from how do I do all the things I could possibly do to how do I do the few most impactful things that I want to do the best I can possibly do them. And when you change the game that way, you realize very quickly that the best way to make the best decisions, right, to do your best work, is to be well rested and relaxed and do a good balance of work and fun and off time and, puzzle completion and clapping. Those are all critical points. Right? I blogged 5 nights a week at Moz for many years. I burned the candle at both ends. Most of those blog posts sucked and were no good and did nothing for the business and were wastes of my time. And I justified them by saying, oh, well, I have to work hard to be successful. I should have blogged 1 night a week and done a better job and written about better things and been more well-rested, and my decision-making and quality of output would have been much higher and my results would have been much better. Mm. It's just I think it's just a logic puzzle, right? That you have to approach the mental model differently. And that, I think that's really hard when the culture of tech ingrains this idea of hustle and of hard work. And, I wrote about it in the post, right? Like, I completely empathize. Like, I get why in sort of a late stage capitalist environment where, your healthcare is always at risk and like you're constantly worried about money, and no matter how much you're making, you always feel like other people are doing better than you. And, you're in this race. Like, I get how that environment creates a sense of, I want to post hoc justify why rich people are rich. And that justification is, well, they must have worked harder than me. Not they were luckier, not the system sort of reward, is unfair and unbalanced. That's no fun. So our brains go to a different place. Anyway, trying to get away from that.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important point to make, that there are many environmental and systemic things that are providing nudges for us to remain in that hamster wheel of exhaustion and demand of needing to do more and hustle a bit more. And then as well, there's some glorification of it too. It's something that can be seen as a badge of honor. But at the end of the day, it feels as exhausting as it sounds, you know? But Amanda, I'd love to hear from your perspective too. What, as Rand brought up a couple of examples, well, what are maybe some other things that, just to kind of paint a picture, people resonating with this description of hustle culture, what are some things that perhaps you felt you did earlier in your career that you maybe feel the greatest relief to not be doing now, in the sense of how you approach work and how you think about it at SparkToro?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a part of me that has always kind of done chill work. But like, and I guess by that, I mean, with I'll just speak to the marketing portion of my career, especially because that's what I remember most. Uh, I've always been on this side of marketing that was less direct response driven, less customer acquisition driven. I mean, yes, I've always cared about acquiring customers, but I wasn't on the teams that were responsible for like the ad spend and realizing the positive return on it, or that didn't come until much later in my marketing career. So I've always approached marketing from that qualitative standpoint of like, what can I do that will, or what can I write or create that will resonate with the best audience? And best audience is not necessarily the biggest audience, right? It's the people who are most likely to become customers, which may or may not be a huge amount of people. So I've always kind of focused on that side, and I've always kind of worked on the things that I thought would have the biggest impact on the business. And I think this kind of just became it. And the funny thing is that I think this came also from the results driven piece that I didn't actually work on. Here's a weird example, or I'll try to tie this together. At NatureBox, we were a direct to consumer company that was trying to grow quickly. But I didn't work on the customer acquisition side. I was on the kind of, we'll just say, the brand marketing side. But I worked with leadership who cared very much about the growth stuff. So that I had to come at it like, okay, how am I going to do brand marketing that can grow our customer base? And that's a hard place to be in, because you don't really track ROI of your PR efforts. Like, no, and like I did, and it wasn't great, but it worked. Right. So by that, I mean, when I worked on PR pitches, it wasn't cool. Let me try to follow up with the New York Times every week, because that's not how you get in the New York Times. They don't choose stories like that. That's not how they write about you. Instead, I learned to come at it from, okay, what are the publications that I could try to get us earned media in that could potentially grow our customer base? So then it wasn't like the major publications. it wasn't really the trade publications. It was like the niche websites that catered to specific needs. So the websites that were like life hackers. So where that audience base is looking for, how can I do these things in my life in the more optimal way? And then it became, okay, I'm going to pitch to you getting healthy snacks delivered to your door. That's a life hack. And so once it came at it at that point of view and secured the media spots, then I was able to do things like, great, let's try to do a vanity URL so that we can track through that. Or let's do a discount code so we can track the discount code. And the discount code thing, that was what helped us realize that ROI. Then we saw like after a couple months, we had like over 1,000 brand new customers just from these sort of channels. So yeah, so that was kind of my weird way of saying that was how I went about chill work, which was realizing early on I had to figure out how to get the most impact out of the work that I was doing day to day.
That feels so intentional and deliberate. And it almost seems like you really need to be in a state, almost a meditative state, to think through things with such process, and such discipline. Because there is it's like, oh, this isn't getting results. How can we measure results? Oh, let's forget about, let's do the next thing. It does kind of like you feel the engines running. And so that kudos to you to remain so patient.
And it's funny,
discipline.
It didn't come from a chilled place. That came from like hours of ruminating and worrying about, oh, I can do this thing right, or like, oh, how can I really make an impact here? So it didn't originate from a chill place. It just sort of transformed into that over time as I got more experience, got more losses, got more wins, and just sort of learned, how to do things a little bit better along the way.
Excellent. And well, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, of course, want to direct folks to that post on chill work, Rand, but if we could open up with something of a definition or a picture so that people can understand a little bit more of, what are some of the tactical applications of this culture and this philosophy into SparkToro. What do you see this as particular? Like, what is chill work in your words?
Yeah. So in comparison to hustle culture, which I define as working hard with the goal of working hard, right? It is putting in long hours because the goal of your work is to put in long hours. Whereas chill work is doing the absolute bare minimum possible to achieve the results that you want to achieve. And when I say bare minimum possible, I don't mean in terms of quality. I mean in terms of time to output, right? So what I want is deep work done well to the best of my ability when I'm in the best state of mind to do it at a time when I can produce that work most competently in the shortest quantity of time. Instead of, I need to write this blog post for tomorrow, it's, I need to write this blog post eventually. I need to write this blog post when I'm in the best headspace to do it. Because when I am, it's going to take me 45 minutes and it's going to be a freaking great post. Versus I have to get it out tomorrow. It's probably going to fall flat. I am sure that everyone who's listening has had exactly that experience of, I have to get this thing out. I have a deadline. Deadlines can be useful in some cases for some things. I'm not going to argue that. But the conception of chill work is making as much of your work as possible that highest quality at the best time for you, your life, your mental and emotional state, your quality of work, and engineering your business and your work life to allow for and encourage that.
So under that umbrella, that lens, what do things like, I guess, just goals and objectives look like? Like, does that get as specific and narrow and as aggressive, or where do you find the balance between what's reasonable and not, or how do you all approach strategic objective setting?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely much easier when it comes from the top down, right? So I think chill work has to start from the leadership team, or it's going to be very difficult to embrace. I do think many folks are their own boss these days, right? You're whatever, you're a consultant, you're a solo contractor, like you're independent. And so you get to be the boss of your time and you can adopt chill work standards. But if you work in an organization that believes in the hustle and not the chill, it's not going to work out, right? So from that perspective, right, the top level is first engineering a business that can be very effective at many different growth and revenue numbers, as opposed to, for example, but there are many ways to get into this problem space, but raising venture capital is one way to ensure that chill work will rarely ever be possible for you. Because the asset class, right, the sort of billionaires and LPs and funds that put money into the venture asset class are trying to beat market rate of returns. And they're trying to do that by having, a few companies turn into the next Facebook, Google, Uber, Airbnb. And then most of those companies, like 95% of them, die trying, right? So essentially, you're supposed to get on this growth treadmill where you raise more money, you're spending faster than you are making money. And so you're in the hole and you have to raise a next round. And the only way to do that effectively is to show the classic hockey stick style growth, right? The not incremental, but what's that called? Not expositional growth, exponential growth.
Exponential.
Expositional growth. That's what we do here at SparkToro. Very expository, but so that that rat race, if you're in it, it's gonna be pretty darn tough. Even if you're in it, though, I contend in the blog post and would say to folks, you can still adopt the mindset of chill work, which is essentially, how do I prioritize my days and weeks and months and my workload in such a way that I give myself space to do my highest quality of work at the best time, rather than glorifying long hours. And I do believe that's possible. I think you can have those conversations with your boss and your team and your manager and say, hey, you're expecting this. I think I can deliver that better. I think I can deliver the results that you're looking for better if we create an environment that is more commensurate with how I work well and how human beings work well.
It seems like what Amanda did specifically, of course, she had the right audience when y'all were talking about working together, but exactly what Amanda said of, there is a way in which she wanted to take more control of her career and in her work experience. That is possible. There is some possibility that you might be swimming upstream depending on what kind of culture you're involved with. But I think that that's an important thing for folks to remember, as you mentioned there, Rand, that there is a way in which you can still step back, and the balance of, I'm a very competent person. I'm skilled. Amanda's context, an extremely savvy marketer. It's like, all right, given that that's the fact, and I also love to do my work when I do it and do it well at that point in time, how can I balance that with what are other, very important priorities and values? Because it's very difficult, for people to find the right fit folks, So I think that that's in so much of, again, the environmental context, folks who are employees can feel that, they are on unsure ground, whereas there is not the power dynamic that you really understand, although it can feel that way on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'll add to this too. A way that, I'm thinking about chill work now is everything that I work on, I want to have at least two purposes. Like everything I work on should serve at least two needs. And by that, I mean, like a couple weeks ago, I did a cold outreach presentation for office hours. But then from that, I thought, well, I already have the content built out and like the thoughts in my head. It should just become a blog post. Like it should just do that too. And then even like when we respond to customer support queries, like we had one that came in the other day that was about like basically just like, how do I use SparkToro to make better marketing decisions? And it took me a little while, but like I sat down and like did a couple of queries, wrote out a couple of examples, with the goal of answering the question, of course, but also with the second goal of, well, now I'm going to save this answer and I'll put it into my Google Doc of customer support macros and save it for later. And next time someone asks a similar question, which I'm sure someone will, it's not an uncommon question, I can just use the same like template as my starting point. So that's kind of how I think about that.
That's a brilliant example there too, and that then feeds other content that you create. It's what a great insert into a blog post or fuel for what's to be a future office hours of y'all.
Totally, yeah.
So there's just so many different ways to when you take the moment to pause, but you need that moment to pause and think about how can I get the greatest mileage out of this one very important thing which you're doing, the premise there of responding to a customer's inquiry. How can you get the greatest mileage out of that?
Yeah, and it's not even just like the marketing goal, right? Like sometimes there's a people goal. Like sometimes there's, how do I phrase this? It's like sometimes I'll, if I when I answer that question, or the other reason or the other purpose of my response to that query is then Rand and Casey don't have to do. Like, what can I do? So that sometimes I approach these customer support questions like, all right, like, well, what can I answer? Or what does it require specifically Rand's and Casey's attention, or Rand's or Casey's attention? Like, what can I add to this? Someone else doesn't have to.
And that's a very admirable pursuit. That will put some good karma out into the world for sure. Well, I want to be super respectful of your time. So it's self-interested a transition here in the conversation to talk a little bit more about SparkToro specifically. We here at Grow Ensemble, we run content campaigns with businesses in this space and cover a lot of diverse, interesting topics. So something that we've just started to use, SparkToro specifically for our campaigns. I'd love to get the experts themselves to help provide maybe some tips and strategies as to, for example, a client we worked with a while back, the world's first regenerative organic certified vineyard out in California. And so what they're doing essentially is setting the new standard for how grapes are grown, right? Because this sort of methodology of agriculture is something that can be one of the many solutions to climate change, sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere and bringing it down to the soil. So brilliant folks doing really incredible stuff. They're in California, Amanda. But I would love to know if that vineyard, for example, wants to get the word out about both their vineyard, for one, and what they're doing to kind of set a new standard in the wine industry. But two, this important concept of regenerative agriculture and its benefits and its important or critical value as being a potential solution to climate change. Where might we begin with a tool like SparkToro to make a bigger splash with the content campaign that we put together with them?
So I'm excited about this because I learned about regenerative agriculture pretty recently. And I think it's a super interesting space. So I would probably start with the query of my audience frequently talks about regenerative agriculture. And then I would start looking at, because this is a pretty niche topic and it's an emerging industry, I would pay very close attention to the top hashtags used and the frequently used phrases that come up in SparkToro. So of the people that talk about regenerative agriculture, they also talk about supply chain, climate crisis, healthy soil, greenhouse gas, soil carbon. And these are topics, right, that are all related to the notion of the problems that regenerative agriculture seeks to solve. So that's where I might even start with content, right? I might think about like, is there content we can create that speaks to soil, like what healthy soil is, what it mean, what soil carbon actually means. So I would do that, and then I would look at in SparkToro, I would look at the social accounts. So I would be very interested to connect with people who also talk about this topic or who seem to know a lot about this topic. So I would scroll through and I would see people like who are some of the top ones? I'm looking in SparkToro now. Like, okay, people who talk about this or people publications are like World Wildlife Fund, Greta Thunberg, Mother Jones. So these all seem like potential people and websites, publications to pay attention to read more. Could be opportunities to do some PR pitches or guest pieces. And then, I would, look through this further, and try to uncover, like, maybe there are other regenerative agriculture companies that I could do some co-marketing, right? Like, one that I happen to know of is Force of Nature. They are doing regenerative farming. So, that could be a potential co-marketer, right? Like if I'm doing, so I, as a vineyard or wine company, like, great, that's not a competitor, but we probably share the same audience. So I would look at those opportunities.
Yeah, and there's most certainly that. It seems, we look at any industry, tea or if we're talking wine, or then it's anything in food, a lot of people are starting to move to this space. Rand, is there anything that you might add to that would be particularly pertinent?
I think Amanda's approach is exactly how I'd go about it from a tactics perspective. And maybe, my only shift from kind of like a strategic, like top level perspective is, what's this winery trying to accomplish, right? Is their big goal more customers buying their wine, people coming to their vineyard? Are they trying to build their footprint kind of in the agricultural press? Are they trying to get more partners? Are they looking for distributors, right? Maybe they're trying to get into more stores. And so I would start from that perspective and basically say, our goal for the next year is, whatever, we want to get distributed in a bunch of retailers. And who are the buyers, the wine buyers at those retailers? Okay, there are these kinds of people. I can go to SparkToro and look for, my audience uses these words in their profile, wine buyer. What do they pay attention to? Boom, these publications, these people, these podcasts, these YouTube channels. Guess where we're going to be? That's where we're going to take our pitch. Oh, I can see that, whatever, 31% of people who have, talked about or mentioned wine buyers are reading EcoWatch. Holy crap. EcoWatch? That's my boys. Like, right? I'm going to go and I don't even have to pitch them. I can basically be like, hello, I exist. And what will they like, man, if you are the very first regenerative agriculture winery in the United States, you have got such a competitive advantage over anybody else when you are pitching anything at the intersection of climate change and agriculture meets thing everybody loves, aka alcohol, right? Like but that is not a difficult pitch. You're going to have a beautiful time doing that. I think that there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity, but I would think about it from that like structure, that strategic structure. And then I would use exactly the tactical sort of step-by-step process that Amanda described to go through it.
Hey, what's the winery? Well, thank y'all so much. It's called Tablas Creek.
How do you spell
it? Tablas Creek, Creek. If you follow them on Twitter, they have some excellent vineyard content of all the different things that they're doing to run the vineyard the way that they do, regeneratively, and as well grow wine in a really interesting way
too.
Yeah,
beautiful.
These are
it looks like an Eden of sorts.
So the other thing that's beautiful is, since they have such a social following already, you can take it and go plug in, my audience follows a social account, Tablas Creek, and then see if I want to find more people like the people I already reach, this is where I should be. 46% of them follow Decanter, right? If Decanter hasn't already written about Tablas Creek, they would be very, very high on my list. Wine Lovers, The Drinks Business, Mac Cocktail, maybe it's a tougher pitch. NPR, I bet NPR would do a piece on them. You just got to find
Yeah.
someone with a luxurious voice who works there, for that like NPR. Welcome to the Tabless
That's
Creek
right.
one. I can't really do it. That's my best NPR voice. It's not great.
Well, it's always interesting to see the different aims and objectives that businesses like these have, and there's so many overlapping constraints as well, because both it's a context of they're interested in growth, but there's always the at what cost, because the more at which these businesses grow, there is a concept as well of just what's generally comfortable for them, their staff, but likewise they're consciously minding what is the environmental impact of growing to X
Corey,
size.
it's telling us that this
Or
is
what
a
is the
Chillwood
social-
winery.
I would say so. Jason, the general manager there, he is an excellent follow on Twitter and his blog. I've learned so much about wine, even though I've stopped drinking it since we're expecting a baby. I got to get y'all going on with your Fridays here, but if you wouldn't mind, might we wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions? All right, we'll start with Amanda. What's maybe a good book that you'd like to recommend to our listeners, or documentary, some resource, something that's impacted you recently? It can be about what we've talked about here, or just something elsewhere in your life that's particularly struck you.
I'm going to go ahead and recommend this book. I don't know if either of you have heard of it, but it's called Lost and Founder. It's by some guy named Rand Fishkin. And he he tells a story of how he founded and grew this company called Moz. It is truly a great book. It's a lot of fun to read. Sorry, Rand, your pain was fun. No, but it's really enjoyable to read. Each chapter is even kind of a standalone like story. So, I mean, yeah, you should read it cover to cover, but each chapter has its own standalone insight. So, all very valuable, great for startup founders and employees of early stage companies. So I really do think great for your audience because they care about growth and good marketing, and it's just a very honest story.
I'd reiterate that in my going through it in preparation for this chat. Very transparent, quite authentic, which is refreshing. You don't always get that from the context of any books with the business overlap. So sorry, Rand, your opportunity here for a recommendation.
Oh, man. So one of my favorite books when thinking about marketing and business overall is April Dunford's book, Obviously Awesome. I gave it to Casey. I was looking around for my copy and then I'm like, oh, shoot, I gave it to Casey. But I think positioning is one of the most underrated classical marketing techniques. And when you have a deep understanding of it, you can make experiments there that are potentially world-changing, life-changing for your business. It's strange to think about, wait, maybe if we talked about our product as solving this problem instead of that problem for these people instead of these people, we would be growing much faster and having much more happy customers and be much more successful. I don't know why not a lot of businesses think about that, right? Like founders have in their head who they think they're solving for and what they think they're solving. Sometimes just got to change it up.
Yeah. +1 to this book. It's a great book. And April really like breaks down specifically why, like with examples, like why bad messaging is bad, what's wrong with it, what would make it better and what would make it the best. Like she really gives great, both strategic and tactical advice for how to do this.
Excellent. Great recommendation. And next question for y'all, Amanda, back to you. What's one daily habit or morning routine you feel like you absolutely have to stick to, if anything?
Every weekday I work out. It became a lot easier to sustain a workout habit when I decided to just do a couple minutes every morning. Because before my approach was, all right, got to go to the gym, do an hour, get some solid cardio, do some strength training. And then when I thought about it like that, I was like, well, I'll just do it tomorrow. I just had 3 good days this week, and I would keep moving it around and find excuses. But once I told myself, okay, just wake up half an hour earlier, even that, do a 10-minute workout, whether it's like a 10-minute bike ride or a 10-minute yoga session, like just do that. And then that's the goal every weekday. And so since then, I've worked out every weekday since like December, and it is now October. And I'm in the
Wow.
best shape I've ever been in my life.
This, some of those habit tips and prescriptions, they're just so true. And it's frustrating, where it's like start small and you get frustrated to even look at that advice. And you're like, but what's 2 minutes going to do, But there it is.
There it is.
Case study.
Yeah. And if I have more time, if I have more time and energy, I'll, do a half hour.
Sure.
But yeah, 10 minutes is the goal.
And Rand, to you?
Weirdly enough, I do exactly the same thing as Amanda, although I am not every weekday. I'm probably 5 out of 7 days. Some good weeks, 6 or 7, but 5 out of 7. And yeah, I'm the same way, like 10 or 15-minute morning workout. Let's see, my one habit that I think is really great. Okay, there's this weird, this is going to be so strange. Don't make your bed. I know this is going to sound crazy, but there's a bunch of science that by making your bed, you actually trap germs and dirt and like grime inside the bed. And so your sleep is unhealthier and like you get sick more often, blah, 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 other skin things like yada, yada. Don't make your bed, leave the covers off in the morning. Plus, think of the time savings. Look at you. Instead of making your bed, you can do 10 push-ups.
God, that's blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, you leave it open. Like,
jeez.
Change the game.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I got to first be comfortable with the sight of that.
Yeah. Just think of the bed, like when you see it rumpled up, think of how it's airing out and like how beautiful it is that all these little microbes
are a little more
leaving
natural.
bed.
I will never look at my bed, my unmade bed, the same way. Yeah.
I
a last one. Oh, do you really?
Yeah. I like leave it open.
Does everyone at SparkToro do this?
No, I guarantee you Casey makes his bed. He's like, and he'll also be like, I don't shed microbes.
Yeah. Not a problem for me. I don't shed microbes. I've had it tested. Well, one last one for y'all, and whoever maybe feels most ambitious to jump in. What's one last bit of parting advice that you might share with our audience? These folks are social entrepreneurs and change makers from all sectors, all over the world, trying to leave the world a better place than they found it.
Oh man, gosh, that is a beautiful thing to do. I like the advice that you can do small things over and over again and make a huge difference, rather than you have to constantly be thinking of what's the big change that I need to make. And I also want to, especially when it comes to like social and environmental change, I also want to recognize that like a lot of stuff is, I think there's this like overwhelming guilt that a lot of people feel and almost paralysis that people can feel from it. And just keep in mind that there can be a lot to fix and the world can still be a beautiful place. There can be a lot going wrong and it can still be okay to enjoy and appreciate the life that you have. And maybe that's actually a better way to live than in constant fear. And yeah, I think it's hard. Like I have that existential dread just like everybody else, but finding a way to appreciate little stuff, a blue sky on a clear day and a bird that you never saw before. That's great.
Excellent. And to you, Amanda.
I don't want to go next. That was really beautiful. I think I'm going to say, find your people. Like, just focus on finding your people. Don't think about how many, like, how can I get the most people? It's find your people, like the people you most connect with, who you can best work with, who you can help. I really, really think if you focus on the few people who you feel like you can make an impact on, who you can help, who you can connect with, then I think you will kind of naturally start to, I don't know. I think you would kind of naturally start to create the value that you want to create, and that you'll find more opportunities, and really just make more meaningful connections.
I think that's excellent advice for us to end on. And last thing, where's the best place to keep up with y'all individually and check out what's going on at SparkToro for folks who are
we have this
interested?
fancy new thing called a website. And if you take your internet browser, Mosaic or whatever you've got, to SparkToro.com, you can sign up for a free account and play with it a whole bunch. If you run out of queries, we'll actually email you and give you more. Shh. This is Casey's new test that he's running, where he's like, let's just give people more queries if they run out. So yeah, go ahead. You'll get 5 free queries, but then if you run out, you get some more. If you find it useful or valuable, and you find some fascinating data in there, there's obviously paid plans too, but we have like 50,000 marketers who use just the free version and get plenty of good stuff from that. So by all means, I encourage you to do that. And if Amanda and I can be helpful, you can just drop us a line. You can reach both of us through support@SparkToro. That goes to our support team. There's only 3 of us, so ta-da. Corey, thank you so much for having us. This was really fun.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Y'all, we'll have everything linked up in the show post at growensemble.com. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. This was great.